The Health Minister Sussan Ley continues to face scrutiny over her decision to purchase a luxury apartment while on a taxpayer-funded trip. And she claims the purchase was spontaneous. Opposition frontbencher Mark Butler says the Health Minister has more questions to answer.
I think there are very serious questions for Sussan Ley to answer about what she and her husband were doing that day on the Gold Coast. And the answers that we have got, not from the Minister herself, but from her office, are changing almost on a daily basis. Originally, we were told that she was there to meet with health stakeholders, so presumably doctors' groups or nurses' groups, or a visit to the Gold Coast Hospital or something. And after we quite reasonably, I think, asked for some details about those stakeholder meetings, she changed her story and said instead that she was meeting with individual patients about medicines, and that, of course, would be too secret and too personal to divulge to the Australian community, so we'd have to take her on trust. We're also expected to take on trust this story, apparently, that in between this busy series of meetings, the Minister was taking a short stroll on the streets of Gold Coast and stumbled upon an auction, and without apparently any sort of finance pre-approval or a building inspection or perhaps even looking through the apartment very closely at all, on an impulse, she bought a luxury apartment of $795,000 with her husband. I mean, none of this holds water. What we saw last year, for example, with Stuart Robert, that when he mixed up his private and his public responsibilities as a minister in the Turnbull government, he had to go. And we've seen that in the past, particularly in the last few years with the Abbott and Turnbull governments. What we're getting, though, is stonewalling from this minister. She's gone into hiding. The Prime Minister's not doing anything to present some detail and some evidence to the Australian community that the ministerial standards that are much stronger than the usual standards that apply to public officials, they apply to ministers for very good reason, that there must be a clear delineation between your public life and your private life. And there are very serious questions for either the Minister or the Prime Minister to answer very quickly, because all of the evidence points to a clear conflict of interest. And the only conclusion that you can draw, really based on the evidence and the usual sort of assumptions that people would make about the nature of impulse buying, is that the Minister and her husband were there with the purpose of buying a luxury apartment. Until she provides some evidence to the contrary, the only conclusion I think reasonable people can make is that there was a breach of ministerial standards that mean that this minister has to go.